Hey guys, this is your fiery friend the Infernoman here, and if you're into games, you're right where you need to be. But before we get into it, if you like the content that I put out there, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit me up with a like, or even better, subscribe to me. It really shows that people do care about my content. Now, if you have questions, comments, stuff you'd like to see played or discussed, you can at me on Twitter or chat directly with me as I stream 2 to 3 times a week on Twitch. A visual link for those are up on the screen right now, and I will have direct links in the details below. And for today's video, we're going to be covering Discount Discard. This is going to be a cheaper budget version of Discard that you can utilize to take advantage of some of the decks that are running around in the format. To be honest, I only came up with this deck because right now we're dealing with a lot of reanimation decks out there, a lot of graveyard shenanigans, and I wanted to see if I could punish them utilizing a small amount of rares and mythics. In fact, we are going to be utilizing only 8 rares and 2 mythics in this version of the deck. But before we go into it, if you haven't seen me do these videos before, here's basically how I break it down. First off, we'll go over the creature package, then we'll cover the non-creature spells, we'll cover the land base if applicable, we will go over the sideboard to show you what you can utilize to bring in versus other decks, we will have a couple of matches against Sparky to show you how to utilize the deck, and if you do like it, a way to upgrade to make it a lot more powerful. Now to begin, we will be utilizing 11 creatures in the deck, a very small amount, but a very important set. To begin, Foulmire Knight is a 1 mana, 1/1 with Death Touch. The card itself just helps us punch above our weight limit, and again, the Profane Insight Adventure side just allows us to draw a card and lose 1 life. We're only utilizing this because it is a 2-in-1. Burglar Rat, very simple, 1/1 for 2 mana, just allows us to discard a card when it enters the battlefield. Again, just think of it as another way to just get more cards out of their hand, and it allows us to chump block at least for a little bit longer while we set up our game plan. Tiny Bones, very important in the deck. Only 2 copies, however, because it is budget, is allowing us to draw and lose 1 life, similar to the Foulmire Knight, as long as its ability triggers off. The way its ability triggers is by having us discard. The biggest thing, however, is this can be one of our massive payoffs if you can get to the 6 mana, and also you can completely empty their hand. As you see right here, for 6 mana, each opponent with no cards in hand loses 10 life, which is a very frightening way to close out the game out of nowhere. And finally, a single copy of Tergrid, God of Fright. As you can see, this is also a card that's technically a 2-in-1, so if you can get a full place of them, this is a fantastic card to have. The Lantern side is sometimes more better than the creature side, mostly because it's sometimes harder for an opponent to get rid of the artifact. The other thing really to keep in mind is if you do know that you can get down the creature side, this thing is insane in terms of its value. As you can see when you read the card, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you can put that card from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So that's where it gets really scary. If they're even throwing away lands, we get to basically steal the lands and get free mana from that. That is a huge amount. Decks that are utilizing cards such as the Faithless Looting gives us a massive amount of value towards us. So it basically throws our opponent's entire game plan off track and gives us usually the win. But otherwise, that is it for you guys for the discard creature spells. Not anything super crazy here, but they are critical to the game plan to help us close out and win the game. As far as the main meat of the deck, you're going to be utilizing a lot of non-creature spells, starting with 4 copies of Duress and Unburden. Both of these allow us to discard cards from our opponent's hand. Specifically, however, the Unburden is really nice because not only is it 2 cards, if you don't need it, you can cycle it away to get a fresh card, especially if your opponent already has nothing in hand. As far as the more scarier cards that can help us close out the game, you have Davriel, Rogue Shadow Mage, you have Torment of Scarabs, Ill-Gotten Inheritance, and Raider's Wake. Now, all of these cards kind of all work together and synergize, starting with, of course, the Davriel itself. This is basically a 3 mana, pretty low loyalty planeswalker, but it helps us slowly get rid of a couple cards. If they only have 1 card or no cards, then this starts pinging away. And it can be a clock if your opponent can't dig anything out. As far as your enchantments, Ill-Gotten Inheritance will help us with the ping package, and Torment of Scarabs doesn't necessarily immediately ping, but it puts more pressure on your opponent. As you can see, once you put the curse on your opponent, they either have to lose 3 life, or they sacrifice a non-land permanent, or they discard a card. Either way, they are losing value every turn. Raider's Wake is only a single copy, only because it's very situational. As you kind of notice, we don't have that many creatures to utilize its raid ability. However, if we can force our opponent to keep discarding cards consistently, the 2 life can start pinging away at our opponent. Of course, the most important card in our deck is Waste Not. Get this down at least on turn 2, hopefully, and you can generate tons of value. As you can see when you read the card, for 2 mana as an enchantment, whenever an opponent discards a creature card, you get to make a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, we get to generate 2 black mana. And whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, we get to draw a card. So either way, something they get rid of can help us out. Ideally, of course, you want to hopefully try to build up mana, which can help us put down other creatures by turns 3 and 4. But again, whatever you get off of the Waste Not is just going to be good no matter what happens. It'll slowly keep generating more and more value as the game progresses. As you kind of have noticed, our deck actually does not really utilize in the main portion any creature removal, with the exception, of course, of Liliana's Triumph. The downside, of course, being that our deck is a budget deck means that we can't take advantage of its secondary ability, which would allow us to discard a card if we had a Liliana Planeswalker. However, being able to force our opponent to sacrifice a single creature immediately is really nice to have. But of course, this really only works if your opponent is light on creatures, so be aware of that. However, once we get to the sideboard, we'll show you how we can fix that problem. But let's go on now to our lands. Going over really quick the land package, you only are going to be having 24 total. Mostly it's swamps. You will have a single copy of Castle Lockwood to help you keep digging through your deck little by little. Just be aware of course, how much life you are going to ping yourself if you do have extra cards in hand. And of course, the most important card, 3 copies of Bojuka Bog. You've seen this card many times, so I've talked about it in other decks, but we'll explain one more time here. When it enters the battlefield, you just get to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. Obviously, this is going to be mostly against your opponent. And by dumping out their entire graveyard, again, for those reanimation decks, it basically hoses them to a point where sometimes they'll just shame scoop. On the other hand, there have been rare times where you might actually have to Bojuka Bog yourself. This is usually against the Rogues matchup, which is a really annoying matchup. But anyways, that is it for the land package. Nothing too crazy here, nothing too fancy, but we can show you how many other utility lands you can utilize in the upgrade section. Now, as I mentioned earlier from the main deck, our biggest weakness, of course, is we lack a lot of creature removal. Our ideal plan, of course, is to discard everything from our opponent's hand before they can put anything scary down. However, if we do have to deal with go wide strategies or go large strategies, we do have options for that in the sideboard. Bloodchief's Thirst, great flexible card, gets rid of the weak creatures early on, and can be upgraded via the kicker cost if we need to get rid of a bigger creature or a planeswalker. 2 copies of Soul Guide Lantern to help you get rid of graveyards a little easier and provides backup for the Bojuka Bog plan. Feed the Swarm will help you out here if you are dealing with enchantments or additional creatures. Just again, as a friendly reminder, you do lose life if you do utilize it based on the mana value. If you are dealing with lots of go-wide strategies, token decks and whatnot, put a Trespasser's Curse out there. We only need a single copy, mainly because it doesn't happen too often with the current meta. So again, adjust as necessary, but this is a sweet card if they're trying to utilize things such as Collected Company against you. Speaking of other ways to get rid of mass amounts of creatures, this is where your other 2 rares come in. 2 copies of Extinction Event, and for the weaker set, Cry of the Carnarium. Great against such as elves or goblins. And finally, if you are playing against control decks, utilizing Thought Distortion is really good. Although it does take quite a bit of mana at 6, this spell cannot be countered, and that's what makes it really powerful. You get to look at their entire hand, get rid of all non-creature, non-land cards, and then you basically get to exile everything. So that just helps you out a ton in those matchups. But otherwise, that is basically it for the sideboard. I don't know about you, but I am now ready to face Sparky and show you how to utilize this deck. Okay, everybody, here we go. We're going to be playing against Sparky, as always, to show you, of course, how to make most of this deck. All right, so as you can see right here, you basically want to get, of course, a couple of your discard spells in hand, at least something to do on turn 1, 2, and 3. Liliana's Triumph here to get rid of at least one of the weaker creatures early on, and we can chump block with our Burglar Rat and Foulmire Knives. All right, I guess we'll keep this. Let's see how this works. All right, swamp down. Let's get a peek at what Sparky's got. Mostly Sparky's probably going to have a lot of creatures. And no surprise. So as you can see right here, this is what's potentially going to happen to you if you try to go against creature heavy decks. You can see we can't even toss anything out here. So at least we already know what the game plan is going to be against Sparky. They're probably going to be dumping their mountains after we put down the Burglar Rat. Let's see if we can at least try to get ahead here. Let's see. Well, the 10th Street Cadet's going to start creating tokens that we block. So let's just get rid of that now. All right, they sack it. Sparky unfortunately still has a full hand, and we don't have a way to reward ourselves with more discard. If we can get a Waste Knot, this would be fantastic. Okay, so I think Burglar Rat comes down. Make them throw away something. Probably, there you go, it's a land. And pass the turn. Remember, again, you don't have to chump block early with the Burglar Rat. If you are high on life, just kind of ride it out as long as you can, at least until you get to a more comfortable position. But as you can see right here, we don't really have many options. So we're just going to chump block immediately here. We can get rid of the Nest Robber with the Liliana's Triumph. Ooh, we got the Terror Grid. We're so close to getting this off. All right, so we're currently right now at 19 life. We're going to Unburden, Get rid of their other 2 cards in hand. We got rid of it to reduce to ashes. Okay, that's fine. We're at 17 life right now, so that's not too bad. Let us Liliana's Triumph. Get rid of the Nest Robber. Don't forget that this is instant speed. But again, for demonstration purposes, I'm just trying to show you what we can do. Foulmire Knight. It's nice to sometimes get off the adventure side first, but considering the position we're in right now, I want to just strip Sparky away of all resources. All right, Davriel comes down now. Now their hand is basically empty. So we'll get rid of the last card. It was just a land. And now we slowly start pinging away. So this is now where you want to be with the deck. Strip their entire hand. Get out Davriel. Oh, we got Ill-Gotten Inheritance. All right, here is where all the pings now start really stacking up. All right, so ping 2 here on their turn, and we will be able to keep our life total a little higher here. All right, as you can also see, this creature is going to be a little bit bigger, but thankfully, because Foulmire Knight does have Death Touch, we can punch above our weight limit. We could save the Burglar Rat for later. We don't need to take down with Davriel. I want to see if we can get to that last land, though, but I doubt we will. So since we're so close to closing this out, let's put in the Lantern now. Force Sparky to choose. Do they get rid of it? Okay, so they do take 3 damage. 2 more. They're down to 8. See? Little by little. This is a very slow, grindy deck. We won't block in case they have another creature. All right. Ping again for 1. We go up 1 life. We'll take down with Davriel to get rid of that last card. This makes the Lantern a lot more viable because this means now hit them for 3. Okay, so they sack their creature. They got nothing else. Remember again, the Lantern also untaps for 4. So now that we tapped it, we're going to untap by paying 4. Tap again. They take 3 more. Down to 3. All right. That's it. That is game. As you can see right there, that is basically how you play discard. Strip their hand, get down your pingers, and just slowly drain them out. All right. Let's show you at least one other way you can win with the deck. All right, so as you can see in this version, we're going to be showing you how to utilize the deck in a more controlling way. So in this one, let's assume that we sideboarded because maybe we saw what Sparky was doing, which is a lot of creature-heavy shenanigans. So instead, we're going to then see if we can go with more of a blow up their creatures and get rid of their hand. Wall of Runes, that's fine. So in this one, we're going to be a little bit slower than before. So we're going to, again, have a lot of our cards like Extinction Event, Bloodchief's Thirst, just to blow up stuff. We also have, of course, our Tiny Bones, and we're going to see if we can try to get the Tiny Bones win here. All right, so they're putting in the creatures, nothing they can do. This is actually good for us, because now we can start generating some value here. Okay, so you have options. What you can do is we could duress to possibly get rid of something on their hand and dig. We can also Bloodchief's Thirst to keep the board empty. So let's go ahead and see if we can get at least one thing out of their hand. Sweet. Okay, so we got rid of the Water Knot. That's good. That will trigger off Tiny Bones. And let's get rid of the Sworn Guardian. All right, and we'll pass the turn. We draw a card. All right. Tiny Bones is also even, so just don't forget that if you're using your cards like Extinction Event. We're going to hope that they get down that next set of cards here. All right, let's get greedy right now. And we're going to just Foulmire Knight on our turn. We got another Unburden. Put that out. No attacks. Extinction Event will probably get rid of course, the Foulmire Knight because that's odds with the remainder of their cards. But that's fine. This is actually ideal for us right now. So, say our opponent is going very creature heavy. They go swinging in, thinking they're getting a little cheeky here. But now, we will be attacking them in a second. All right, put them down to 19. Extinction Event. Remember again, you want to keep Tiny Bones alive. And thankfully, this time they have nothing but odds, so we're going to go odd. And their entire board is gone. Okay, board's clean. We can now use our Unburdens to get rid of their hand. And maybe if we get up to... Oh, we are close. We are very close right now on this. Let's Bloodchief's Thirst the Turtle. Get in a hit. Down to 18. Okay, so we're close to getting the Tiny Bones win here. Their entire hand's empty now, which is great. The Gull's the only thing that actually can hurt us. Remember again... Your Unburdens also have cycling, so don't be afraid to use those. Let's see, we're not really in a position where we want to... Well, actually, you know what? I changed my mind. We're going to put down the Ill-Gotten Inheritance now. Bloodchief's Thirst, the Gull. So they still have nothing really to hurt us with. Cloud Conceer. Draws another card. Annoying, but again, not the end of the world. All right, their hand's empty. Come on, deck. I want to get to that 6th land, so let's just cycle our Unburdens. There's our land. Okay, now we're in the position that we want to be in. Cycle the Unburdens if you don't need it. And you know what? Let's Liliana's Triumph. They're probably obviously going to get rid of the turtle. Oh, okay, Sparky. I don't know what kind of 4D chess move that is, but anyways, this is now where you can use Tiny Bones. Activates. Remember, you can do that at instant speed, but again, demonstration purposes here just shows us what we're really trying to do. This is how you win the alternate way with Tiny Bones. And there you go. That is the other way you can win with this discard deck. All right. Hopefully you enjoyed both of those. Let's go ahead and now talk upgrades. Now, as far as upgrades to the deck, there are some options, but it really is just going to be dependent on what style of play you want to utilize. If you really want to go a little bit harder with the discard and you need more powerful discard spells, you can't go wrong with Thoughtseize. That's basically the go-to that can replace your Duress. The other option you have now is Inquisition of Kozilek. Again, this is going to be a lot of rares to put in, but if you can't afford it, this is going to be very powerful to have at least a set of both. Inscription of Ruin is a bit of everything. This can help you discard 2 cards and replace the Unburdens that you do have. Also, its ability, if you do want to kick it, can utilize everything else, which is return a creature card with mana value 2 of less from your graveyard to the battlefield, such as getting those Burglar Rats back on the field for free, or else you can also destroy some creatures. So this is a great flex card to just do multiple things. The only downside, of course, is unlike the Unburden, you can't cycle it. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking for more of a combo way to utilize your discard, you can use cards like Torment of Hailfire and Tendrils of Agony. Tendrils of Agony is actually hilarious to use if you can chain together a couple of discard spells and then cast this off to close out the game. If you're trying to focus more on your own card draw and you don't mind losing a little bit of life, you have Phyrexian Arena and Sign in Blood. Both of these cards do a really good job of keeping your hand filled, although one thing I do want to mention with Sign in Blood specifically, keep in mind that it does say target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So you actually could use this against your opponent. By forcing them to draw cards, then you can use your discard spell to get rid of, and then making them lose 2 life can help you get actually closer to winning the game. Just keep that in mind, but also be careful if you ever do that, because sometimes you might actually put your opponent in a favorable position. If you want some more powerful creatures, Phyrexian Obliterator, you can't go wrong with this. This is a really powerful card, especially against certain decks such as Aggro or Burn. Rankle is great with its flying and haste, and also it just works very well with our discard plan, being able to discard a card from your opponent's hand if you choose to do so, or you can force them to sacrifice a creature, or even make them lose life and draw a card. Murderous Rider is an excellent removal plan, and also with its lifelink side, making it a 2/3 body is really good for blocking and keeping your life total high, especially if you combine this with cards such as Phyrexian Arena or Sign in Blood. And the 2 planeswalkers I would recommend is Liliana, Waker of the Dead. It definitely synergizes with the discard plan. Also, it helps you get rid of some creatures, and if you can get that emblem off, you can keep looping a lot of your cheaper creatures to keep their hands empty. Specifically, however, I would also put in as a spicy option Professor Onyx. Professor Onyx's Magecraft ability goes really, really well with your discard. So again, as I mentioned before, with the Tendrils of Agony, you can chain together at least 1 or 2 extra discard spells, which would trigger off the Magecraft ability of Professor Onyx. And then from there, if you can storm off with Tendrils of Agony, this ability will also just make it very hard for your opponent to close out the game, or if nothing else, it should help you at least win. And finally, nothing too fancy here, but if you can get copies of Faceless Haven, I would then highly recommend switching over all your basics into Snowlands. So at least this way, you have an extra creature that you can pull out with Faceless Haven to at least keep your opponent on their toes, puts pressure on the board, and also makes it very difficult to remove at least something on the field that could be a threat to their life. But otherwise, that's all I got for you guys for the upgrades. There are options that I actually did not put out here, but mainly because there are going to be decks that'll utilize those other cards, such as, again, if you want to go more heavier with cards such as Phyrexian Obliterator, maybe you might want to consider instead a mono black devotion deck versus a discard. Likewise, if you want to go more heavier on the Planeswalker plan, you might actually be better off going with a mono black control deck instead. But again, we'll go down the line later on in our future videos to show you alternate ways of playing with mono black. And there you have it. That is Discount Discard. So you tell me, what do you think? Are you a fan of this style of deck where you forcefully draw of cards that make your opponent discard cards? Do you enjoy controlling the board with just only a handful of creatures that slowly whittle away at your opponent's resources? Are you a kind of person that just likes to just generate fun value from making your opponent suffer? Either way, let me know in the comments below, and I would love to hear from you guys. Hopefully we'll try to see if we can get a couple more deck tech videos before I put my opinions out there on some other things that have been happening in Magic. And otherwise, aside from that, thanks again for watching, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe if I helped you out, you learned something, or at least I entertained you. And remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.